I packed my gear on the kitchen table because it was the only flat surface left in the apartment. Phone gimbal, the cheap shotgun mic with the loose connector, a roll of tape, a small flashlight, and the old pocket EMF meter I bought off a guy who swore it worked. The gimbal drifted left, like always. I nudged it straight and told myself I could fix the drift in the app. Rent sat as a red number at the top of my banking screen. Due tomorrow. I closed the app and laid the phone face down like it couldn't see me if I didn't look at it. My channel dashboard showed last month's watch hours in a dip that hurt to see. My best video was still the abandoned cereal factory from 2 years ago, and I had been trying to outrun that one night ever since. My dad used to say, one good day does not make a career. He also used to say you should hold on to a good job when you find one. He had opinions about the channel. He didn't like hearing me call it the channel. He said, show up on time somewhere people will pay you to be. Fair point. I opened a text from my mom. She had sent another listing for a warehouse job. Early mornings, benefits after 90 days. She did not say anything about the channel. She just said, think about it. I told myself I would think about it after tonight. I put the gear in the tote and rehearsed the intro while I shoved the tote into the trunk. I tried to make the line sound casual. Hey guys, quick check-in from Riverside. I tried again, less eager. Hey, Anthony here, live at Riverside Hospital. I hated both. I started the car and the gas light blinked. I put $20 in the tank and asked the pump for a receipt I knew I would never file. The sun was already low over the strip mall roofs. The hospital waited on the other side of town where the trees had been left alone. Riverside closed in 1998. The official line was budget, staffing, consolidation. If you read the old community board posts, you saw other words too. Overdoses, miscounts, 2 patients sent home with the wrong meds, 1 boiler inspection that never got logged. I found a state PDF with blacked out names and a letter about temporary closure pending review. Temporary became forever. The windows got boarded, then unboarded, then broken. Security used to patrol twice a week, according to a comment from 6 years ago. They stopped when kids stopped going there for dares. I was not there for a dare. I needed a good stream. My phone kept buzzing in my cup holder with the YouTube Studio app trying to help. New viewers prefer shorter intros, try chapters, optimize thumbnail. I silenced it and put on the old hoodie with the stitched logo I made when I still thought I should have a logo. The drive took 20 minutes through old neighborhoods, then 7 more on a road where the streetlights gave up. I pulled off by the chain link fence and parked so I could point the phone at the entrance from the hood. A gray sedan sat in the far lot with its lights off. I noticed it, decided it was nothing, and went back to my setup. The main doors were double glass with plywood over the right side. The left panel was cracked like a spider web. Graffiti in white said, "Where did they put the bodies?" Someone else had written another word I didn't want on camera. I took a breath and talked through my teeth. Relax your shoulders, make your voice light. Be entertaining, not desperate. Then I laughed because that sounded desperate. I set the gimbal on the hood, clipped the mic, and checked the battery twice. Phone was at 87%, good enough. I took out the roll of tape and put a little tab on the cable so it wouldn't pull my phone jack sideways. This was the part where a bigger channel had a friend to hold a light and hype the intro. This was me, alone with my own voice. I hit go live. The spinning wheel turned, and then I saw my face in the corner, underlit and washed out, and the chat box popped like a fish tank. Usernames I recognized from bad nights and quiet mornings. Someone typed L streamer. Someone else wanted me to say their name. Viewer count started at 9, then 11, then 9 again. I smiled in a way I hoped looked like a choice. Hey, Anthony here. We're at Riverside Hospital. I've been here during the day, but this is the first night stream. We're gonna do a walkthrough. No nonsense, no jump cuts, just a straight look. It's cold, but we're good. Got the light, got the gear. We're gonna check the main floor and see what's left." The chat kept moving. "Bro, show the bodies. Show the morgue. Is that the serial guy?" One person typed, "You got this, man." The counter hit 13. I kept my shoulders square to the camera so they wouldn't see how I kept glancing past it at the dark glass. Background for anyone new. I kept my voice steady. Riverside closed in '98. Official story was budget and consolidation. Locals say it went downhill in the last year. Records got messy. A donation notification slid across with a soft chime. It was small, but it was the sound I had been waiting for all day. Ex-Canaan Lord 85 $5. Glad you went live tonight. I smiled for real. Couldn't help it. Thank you, Canaan. I tapped the phone screen like I could touch the message. All right, let's go see the lobby. I lifted the rig and walked to the door. Gravel crunched under my shoes. The wind carried a paper cup across the asphalt, and it knocked against the curb with a hollow sound. The door was lighter than I expected when I pulled it. The plywood scraped and the glass shifted in its frame, and I thought about all the hands that had pulled it open before mine. I pulled the door open. The air smelled like wet paper and old paint. I stepped inside and stopped at the lobby threshold. My phone light caught a front desk with a plastic inbox, a schedule board, and ceiling tiles spotted from leaks. A single chair faced the wrong way, like someone had dragged it and left. We would start here and take it slow. The lobby opened into two main corridors. I kept the camera slow and my light lower than I wanted. The view counter held around 1,100. I told chat we would start left and come back for the other side. "Main corridor first," I said. "We'll keep it steady. I know everyone wants the big hits, but this place is all small things." The first hallway had the usual. A wall clock stuck at 4:18. Torn binders that had melted into the tile from water. I aimed at the signage as I walked so anyone who worked here could recognize it. Admissions, imaging, records. Someone typed "show the morgue." Someone else asked where the bodies were. I kept moving. "Just rooms and air," I said to fill the space. A dry erase board listed staff names under Monday through Friday. Below it was a bulletin board with 3 flyers still pinned under cracked covers. Flu shots, a lost badge notice, and a potluck sign-up sheet where someone had written, "Bring anything not potato salad." I let that sit on screen long enough for chat to read. The view count dipped to 1,089. I hit the first junction and panned across the floor. A scattering of syringes, capped and unused. A nurse's shoe with the sole separating. A yellow mop bucket tipped over on its side, dryness telling me it had been empty long before the ceiling stained. It was normal abandoned hospital, the kind you've seen in 10 other videos, and I felt the pressure of that in my throat. I know, looks like nothing. That's what it looks like until it doesn't. The EMF meter sat in the side pocket of my tote. I pulled it and clicked it on without making a big deal. No dramatic music, just a little green bar. It chirped once when I walked past a junction box, then went quiet. I showed it to the camera and said, "Old wiring." Don't clip this and say ghost. It's one little blip. Chat moved slower. People said boring. The number slid to 1,054. I turned into a smaller corridor and found the first thing that did not match a slow budget closure. 2 metal supply carts stood staged like someone pushed them out for the next shift. Plastic-wrapped gauze, paper gowns, sanitizer bottles still sealed. It looked like someone stopped mid-task and never came back. "This is the kind of thing you look for," I said. "Closures don't leave supply carts. This is not a last pass." Past the carts, a door with a frosted window stood cracked open. Break room. Inside were 4 chairs, a microwave on a stand, and 2 lockers with doors wide. The left locker had a jacket hanging on the hook and a coffee mug on the top shelf with a name in black marker half worn off. Mar something. The right locker had a photo strip taped inside the door. 2 people in hospital scrubs making faces. A third frame with a paper snowman stuck to one person's shoulder. The kind of small thing that you leave and then come back for after you clock out. Budget closure, I said, and let it hang. The EMF chirped again in my hand. The bar climbed to yellow for a breath, then fell back. I tracked it toward the doorway. Quiet. I took 2 steps into the hall. It chirped again, then stopped. Wiring, I said. We'll see if it's directional. I turned left. No sound. I turned back toward the junction. The meter ticked once and went quiet. The chat went to 996. Someone said end stream, bro. Someone else said basement or bust. We're mapping the floor. If you want basement, you'll get it. We're not doing the YouTube sprint. I took them down a new wing. X-ray, ultrasound, storage. The ultrasound room still had the paper roll loaded on the exam bed. Somebody kept this neat, then stopped. At the end of the imaging wing, the corridor bent right. Past it, my light caught a set of double doors with metal push bars and a small sign above them. The letters were faded, but you could read the word access. I did not zoom. I did not say the rest. I took a wide pan back to the left to keep faith with the plan. I made a small X on the wall with a piece of tape from my roll to remind myself to check again. The tape looked ridiculous. I did it anyway. Chat said he's scared. Chat said there's nothing here. The count slid to 962. I said, I hear you. And I did. I have clicked out of streams when the air went dead. I took them into records. The file room still had rows of shelves, most folders gone. On the floor near the back was a box that had burst. I knelt and lifted one sheet, a form with medications and a patient ID, the name blacked out by water. The date said 1998. The EMF picked up again in the intersection. The bar rose to yellow and held. I tried the left hall. Quiet. I tried the right. It buzzed. As I came around the corner, the camera picked up the same double doors I had seen earlier from another angle. I kept the camera level and took a breath without making a sound. I checked the time on the overlay. We had been live for 27 minutes. View count dipped to the 800s and steadied. This is where a smart person ends the stream and says highlights tomorrow. But I didn't have highlights. I had empty hallways and supply carts and time cards that proved nothing. I looked at the double doors at the end of the corridor, the ones with the basement access sign, the ones I had been avoiding since I got here. All right, I said, and my voice sounded thin. I know what you want. I know what I said about taking it slow, but the count is dropping and we need something real. I walked toward the doors and put my hand on the push bar. We're going to check the basement, just the stairs at first, just to see. Chat woke up. Someone typed, finally. Someone else said, don't be stupid. The numbers stopped falling. A new notification slid across in clean text with a white background. Ex-Canaan Lord 85, $100. You're making the right choice. I stared at the message for a long second. Not a dare, not a challenge, just confirmation. Canaan, I said quietly. Appreciate that. I lifted the camera and kept my voice steady. We're doing this careful. I did not rush through the next section, but I did not linger either. Pharmacy was empty shelves. The long-term wing had doors with little windows and blinds pulled down, some twisted from hands. I gave each room a count of 3 and moved on. Back at the double doors, I stopped and let the camera sit. The push bars were scuffed where palms had hid over years. The sign to the right had glue residue where a sticker had been peeled away. I put my hand on the bar and did not push. The meter in my other hand stayed flat. The only sound was the low hum of my light and the faint slide of air through somewhere I could not see. I turned the camera toward my feet and took one step forward so they could hear it. Then another. The doors did not need a key. Beyond them was a short landing and then stairs. The kind of institutional stairs with a metal lip and concrete edges that have been chipped by years. My light ran down into the darkness and hit the turn of the stairwell and stopped. "All right," I said quietly. "Top of the stairs." I held the camera level so the horizon did not tilt. "We're going to do this careful." I looked down into the dark and felt my mouth go dry. I thought about my mom's text and the job listing and the red number in my banking app and the gray sedan in the far lot with the lights off. I thought about rent. I thought about how the air coming from below felt a little colder than the air behind me. "Basement level," I said for the recording. "Starting descent." I put my foot on the first step and listened to the sound it made. Then I took the next one. The stairs dropped in a short run, turned on a concrete landing, then kept going. My light showed a narrow wedge at each turn, and then nothing. The handrail was cold through my sleeve. I counted the steps because it gave me something to do with my mouth besides breathe too loud into the mic. 12 to the landing, 11 more, another landing, 10. The air got heavy the way basements do when the world above seals. It held a damp edge, like concrete sweating in the dark. I told the stream we were still moving even though the overlay had started to flicker at the edges. The live icon pulsed, froze, then slid back a second and tried again. Chat lagged into a smear of old lines and then stalled. I heard my own footstep echo, reach the turn and come back thin. 2 more flights and the phone gave up. The live badge disappeared. The viewer number went to 0 like a joke. The chat box went blank. I stopped and listened to what it sounded like without the noise of other people in my pocket. It wasn't silence, not exactly. It was a room tone with nowhere to go. I could hear the small mechanical buzz from my light. I could hear my coat brush my shoulder each time I moved. I could hear my breath change when I thought about how far down I had come. "Still going," I said out loud. My voice came back a heartbeat later. It sounded like a different person. The steps ran out at a painted cinder block wall with a metal door and a sign that had once said something you needed to know and now said nothing. I pushed the bar and stepped into the bottom level. The hallway was a straight line with branch corridors at right angles. The ceiling hung lower than upstairs, and the light from my phone clipped it like a lid. Pipes ran along the corners and sweated onto the concrete. No windows anywhere. No light but mine. When I angled the beam away even slightly, the edges of the world dropped away to a black that wasn't just dark, it was empty. I took 6 steps and stopped to listen. My footfall sloshed echo back from somewhere I couldn't see. I wanted the stream's noise again, even the comments I hated. I wanted the presence of it. The phone stayed blank. I was alone and the building could hear it. I turned, pointed the light back the way I came, and saw the door I had used, painted the same beige as the walls. I tried the handle to make sure I had an exit path. The lever moved half an inch and then hit a block. I pulled harder and felt the kind of resistance that says not stuck, not old, not swollen wood. It said locked. I put my shoulder against it and tried the bar again. It did not budge. "Hey," I said to the empty. "Come on." I tried a third time. The door shook in its hinges, hit a hidden stop, and settled back. My heart sped up in that tight way that makes your throat narrow. Maybe it had a timed lock. Maybe it needed pressure equalized. "Fire code," I said, stupidly reassuring. "Basements always have more than one exit." I put my hand flat on the door like I could feel someone on the other side. It was just cold metal under paint. "Okay," I said, for the camera that wasn't sending to anyone. We find another way up. We always find another way up. I took the left corridor first. My light hit a red-painted door with a push bar and the word exit. I pushed the bar. The bar moved. The door did not. I put more on it. It moved the first quarter inch and then hit that same definite stop. Locked. Back in the main hall, I tried the opposite direction. I tried the west side. Locked. Each spur ended in a door that promised something and delivered a metal thunk under my palm. The EMF meter chirped in my pocket. My phone screen showed a battery icon that had dropped to the high 40s. I checked service one more time. No bars. I kept moving because not moving felt worse. The ceiling hissed where a pipe bled air. A low hum came from somewhere behind a wall. The light in my hand cut a narrow lane and the edges stayed void. At the far end of the loop, the meter did more than chirp. It trilled and held for a second, then trilled again. I took it out and watched the bar climb to yellow, drop, then climb again when I aimed down the next corridor. I tried the side rooms to be sure. Quiet there. Back at the main axis, it woke up again. "Okay," I said. "You're pointing." I didn't dress it as proof. I didn't have the audience to convince even if I wanted to. I had me and the way my skin felt around my neck. The corridor ended at a door that was already open a finger's width. Not a lot. Just enough to make you think whoever went in was coming right back. The push plate had smears on it that could have been grease or old hands. The number stenciled on the door was half gone. I touched the plate with 2 fingers and pushed. Inside was a room I would have called an exam room upstairs. Concrete walls, no window. A single overhead fixture without a bulb. In the middle sat something that made my breath catch. It wasn't a bed, it was a cage. A rusted hospital crib, the sides welded shut with rebar, sitting in the center of the room. But it was too big for a child. Adult-sized. The welds were crude, done in a hurry or by someone who didn't care about clean lines. And the floor. The concrete had been gouged. Deep, frantic scratches radiated out from the crib like a sun drawn by a madman. Not painted, carved. Someone had clawed or dragged something sharp across the floor. In the center of the crib lay a pile of papers, yellowed and water-stained. A heavy, rusted surgical bone saw held them down. I put my light on the crib and the shadows went long against the concrete. Heavy chains ran from the floor to the crib frame, welded in place. The welds were crude, melted into the concrete like they'd been done in a hurry. The chains had held something. Someone. But they were snapped. Not cut. Not sawed through. Snapped. The metal had twisted and broken from the inside of the crib, the ends curled outward like something had pushed with enough force to tear steel. I aimed my light at the papers. The top page had a date. March 1998. The word evacuation in all caps. Below it, a single line. LL-3 wing sealed per county health directive. That was it. No explanation. Just sealed. I reached through the rebar and moved the bone saw aside, careful not to let it touch my hand. Underneath were more pages, clinical notes, patient codes. The word effect repeated over and over. One page had a list of dates in February, pediatric ward, 7 names blacked out, notation beside each, natural causes. I set the pages down. My hands were shaking. The budget story was a lie. They'd been doing something down here, something they couldn't control, something that broke chains welded into concrete. I heard a sound and didn't recognize it for what it was for half a second because I hadn't heard it since I came down. The EMF in my jacket pocket screamed, not a chirp. A full-throat electronic scream that held steady and made the skin at the back of my head lift like cold air had moved through me. I became aware of how I was standing. The feeling that someone had stepped into the room. I turned around to face the door. It was standing there. For the space of a blink, the doorway was filled. An old woman in a white hospital gown, her head tilted at an angle that made my stomach turn. I jerked back, and the phone light swung in a hard line across the opening. The doorway was empty. Just concrete hall and the wall beyond where the beam landed and stuck. I held the light there until my arm shook and my heart had time to crash against my ribs twice and then again. My fingers had gone numb enough that the phone felt like someone else's device in my hand. I stepped sideways until my shoulder felt the doorway frame. I didn't want to turn my back on the room, and I didn't want to stand in it either. I picked up the phone, kept the beam on the hall, and backed out. The scream in my pocket kept me company like a bad alarm. In the corridor, the sound didn't change. I moved until the side corridor opened and stopped to listen. The scream dropped to a steady high whine and then cut to silence so fast my ears rang. I tapped the meter with my knuckles. The bar sat flat. My breath sounded wrong in the heavy air. I tried my phone for emergency call again out of habit. No service, no nothing. The battery number slid down another notch into the low 40s. I put my palm on the wall because the feel of something solid helped. The concrete was colder than my skin and so dry it almost squeaked under my hand. I could feel the presence the way you feel someone in a room when you can't see them. Not movement, not noise. A pressure between your shoulder blades that doesn't go away when you turn. "I know you're there," I said, and I hated the way it made me sound like a kid. The words didn't change anything. The corridor didn't get friendlier. The stair doors didn't unlock. The light didn't reach any farther than it had in the first place. I walked back toward the center junction so I could see 3 ways at once. I was alone in the dark with something that shouldn't exist, and nobody knew I was here. The note said they bound something to the lowest level and then ran. Saying it out loud didn't make the air feel any better. The walls had a way of holding your voice and handing it back slightly flatter. I tried 911 again. The call screen flashed and failed. I typed a text to my mom and let it sit unsent. A sound to my left, not a footstep. The EMF all at once went from dead to tapping like a finger on the casing. I swung the beam and hit an empty stretch of wall where the paint had blistered and fallen. When I pulled the light back, something tall that had been at the very edge of the cone wasn't there anymore, and maybe it hadn't been there at all. "Okay," I said. The word fell and didn't travel. The meter started spiking in quick little bursts. I panned the light down the left corridor. Nothing. I panned it back to the main hall. Nothing. When I kept the beam dead center and looked just past it with the corner of my eye, I saw something standing in a doorway at the far end. When I looked directly, the doorway was empty. I moved the beam to the right corridor and tried not to blink. In the edge of my vision, she was in a different doorway, white gown hanging loose, black eyes watching. When I turned the light directly at her, nothing. When I let the beam drift back to center, she was in another frame, closer. My shoe scuffed the concrete, and the echo made my shoulders jump. The head tilted like something inside her neck had broken. "Don't," I said to whatever was listening. The word meant nothing. I broke and ran because there is a point where steady steps turn into something faster, even when you know fast is the wrong move. The beam cut a shaking lane up the corridor. Doors hit my hands and refused. The meter wailed and quit and wailed again. My phone number fell through the 30s. I took a side hall to my left and she was at the far end, not chasing, just there. The battery slipped into the high 20s. I made myself stop. I planted my back against a wall and put the beam at my shoes so I could see the floor. I tried to think, to make a plan. I turned and went down another hall. I ran again. The long path back to the center. I tried to count to keep time from bending. 1, 2, 3. My body started doing that small shake you get after too much adrenaline for too long. The concrete held me like a mold. I woke to white. Not the void white of nothing, but the chemical white of fluorescent panels and antiseptic walls. My throat felt wrong and my mouth tasted like metal. A machine beeped to my right. I tried to lift my head and the room tilted enough to make me stop. A doctor stood at the foot of the bed looking at a tablet. A police officer leaned near the door with arms crossed and a face that said this was routine. The doctor glanced up and touched the screen once more before stepping closer. "Mr. Blake," the doctor said, "you've been unconscious for 72 hours. I tried to make words. It came out as a sound that didn't help. The doctor poured water into a paper cup and held it while I drank. It hurt going down. Severe hypothermia, the doctor said. Your core temperature was 94 degrees Fahrenheit when paramedics brought you in. Dehydration, minor frostbite on your fingers. You're lucky to be alive. I stared at the ceiling tiles and tried to remember anything after the dark. There was nothing, just the concrete wall at my back and the cold and the battery dying and then white. How did I get out? I said. The officer stepped forward and took out a small notepad that looked like it had been written in and erased too many times. You were found wandering the parking lot in a catatonic state around 4 in the morning. A passing driver saw you and called 911. I didn't remember the parking lot. I didn't remember leaving the basement. I didn't remember walking or standing or breathing air that wasn't underground. We searched the entire building after we brought you in, the officer said. Basement was empty. No anomalies, no signs of anyone else. The officer flipped a page. The basement door was open when we arrived. You open it? I couldn't remember. The officer made a note and continued. The fire door you said was locked. It was stuck from humidity and rust, but it opened once we applied proper leverage. Old buildings do that. I wanted to say it wasn't stuck. It was locked, but my throat didn't have the fight. The officer kept talking. Your equipment was confiscated as evidence during the trespass investigation. We'll return it when the case is closed. Case, I said. You broke into a condemned building, the officer said. Not unkind, just factual. Property owner declined to press charges given your condition. Consider yourself fortunate. The doctor made a note on the tablet and said something about observation and discharge paperwork. I stopped listening and looked at my hands. The skin on my fingertips had gone pale and tight in places like it had been painted over. I rubbed my thumb against my index finger and couldn't feel the texture right. The first 2 days were tests, blood work, CT scan, a neurologist who shined lights in my eyes and asked me to follow her finger, a psychiatrist who sat too close and asked how I was sleeping. I told them about the basement, about the cage, about the woman in the white gown. They wrote things down and nodded and did not look surprised. On the 3rd day, they brought my phone and my gear back in a plastic evidence bag with a case number written in marker. I sat on the edge of the hospital bed in clothes my mom had brought and opened the bag with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The phone turned on. 53% battery. They had charged it. I opened the video files. The footage started normal. Me setting up outside. Me talking to the camera. Me walking through the lobby and the hallways. My voice sounded thin and smaller than I remembered. The basement stairs. The dark hallways. My light cutting a lane through nothing. Then the altar room. I watched myself push the door open and step inside. I watched the beam land on the metal frame. I held my breath and waited for the cage to show in frame. For the rebar, for the gouged floor. The floor was bare concrete, stained, cracked in one corner, empty, no cage, no rebar, no surgical saw. I watched myself stand there reading blank papers that weren't in my hand. I watched my hands shake at nothing. I watched my face go white in the phone's light. I watched myself back out of the room like something was chasing me when the frame showed nothing but walls and shadow. I played it again. Empty floor, blank papers, me losing my mind over nothing. The doctor came in while I was watching it for the third time. She sat in the chair by the window and waited until I looked up. "The footage doesn't show what you remember," she said. Not a question. "No. That's common with hypothermia-induced psychosis. The brain creates vivid, coherent hallucinations that feel completely real. You experienced something, Mr. Blake. Your mind just filled in details that weren't there." She handed me a folder. Psychiatric referral. Prescription for something I couldn't pronounce. The diagnosis was printed on a summary sheet. Hypothermia-induced hallucinations. Acute stress reaction. Panic disorder. "What you experienced felt real because your mind made it real," she said. "That doesn't mean it was." I nodded because nodding was easier than arguing with someone who had the paperwork. They discharged me that afternoon. My mom drove. She didn't ask about the stream or the hospital or what happened in the basement. She asked if I was taking the pills. She asked if I had called the psychiatrist. She asked if I was still thinking about the warehouse job. The medical bill came 2 weeks later. $3,047. I sat at her kitchen table and stared at the number. I thought about Kanan's donations over 2 years and how they had probably added up to something close. I tried to explain it to Marcus once. We were sitting in his car outside a meeting I hadn't gone into. I told him about the cage, about the documents, about the woman with the black eyes. He listened the way sponsors do when they think you're using again. "You've been through trauma," he said. "That's real. What your brain showed you during that trauma. That's different. I saw it. I know you did." He put his hand on my shoulder. "I've seen things too, man. Withdrawal hallucinations, DTS. Felt completely real, but they weren't." I stopped trying to explain after that. A month later, my YouTube channel was gone. I logged in one morning and saw the message in red. Channel terminated for promoting dangerous content and trespassing. All videos deleted. 400,000 subscribers vanished like they had never been there. Decision final. I searched my channel name and found threads, Reddit, Twitter, archived comments. The language was the same everywhere: fraud, clout chaser, mental breakdown. He faked a panic attack for views. Another YouTuber desperate for relevance. 2 years of work erased in a policy decision I would never get to argue with. Nobody believed me. Nobody ever would. I started at Peterson Logistics on a Wednesday. Night shift. My mom had sent me the listing 4 times, and I finally said yes because the rent was real and the pills were expensive, and my dad had stopped asking about the channel. The warehouse was exactly what a warehouse is. Gray concrete floors, diesel exhaust, and cardboard dust. Safety signs every 10 feet. I wore the company vest and stacked boxes and scanned barcodes. Stable, safe, soul-crushing. The cereal factory video felt like it had happened to someone else. That person was gone. I was here, in a warehouse at 2 a.m, moving freight no one would ever remember moving. I didn't think about the channel anymore. That was a lie. I didn't think about Riverside anymore. That was a bigger lie. On my break, I sat in the corner of the employee room and checked my phone out of habit. One unread message. I almost deleted it without looking. Then I saw the name. Kanan Lord 85. I hadn't blocked the account. Some part of me wanted to see if Kanan would say something. The message was short. "Hope you're feeling better. That was incredible content. You really committed to it." I stared at the words until they stopped making sense. Committed to it. Like I had been performing. Like the whole thing was a bit. I scrolled up through the donation history, every message, every dollar, 2 years of support, hundreds of small donations and 3 big ones. The timing of them. Always when I was about to quit. Always when the count was dropping. Always pulling me back. The gray sedan in the parking lot. The $100 donation the moment I decided to go to the basement. You're making the right choice. The basement door, how it was locked, how the police said it was open when they arrived, how I couldn't remember getting out. Reporting it wouldn't help. What would I say? Someone donated money and sent me a message. I had trespassed. I had broken into a condemned building, and the footage from my stream showed nothing but empty rooms and me losing my mind. I put the phone face down on the table and stared at the fluorescent light until the break timer beeped. I stood up and threw the paper cup in the trash and walked back to the floor. The warehouse felt bigger at night. Rows of shelves that went 30 feet high. I was alone in the back section, stacking heavy boxes on a high shelf, when the feeling came back. The same feeling from the basement. The hair on my neck stood up and my shoulders went tight and my hands stopped moving. Anxiety. PTSD. The psychiatrist had warned me about this. Hypervigilance, intrusive thoughts, normal responses to trauma. I kept stacking. The work helped. Scan barcode, stack box, move on. In the corner of my vision, something moved. White gown, black eyes, standing between the shelves at the far end of the aisle. I whipped my head around. Nothing. But I had seen her. I knew I had seen her. My hands started shaking. The box slipped. I stood there and stared at the empty aisle. Just rows of shelves and fluorescent lights and concrete floor. Nothing moved. Nothing made sound. I stood there for a long time before I went back to work. The doctors said hypothermia causes lasting neurological damage. Trauma creates persistent hallucinations. The mind plays tricks when it's been through extreme stress. Every day I repeat it. When I wake up at 3 in the morning in a cold room that shouldn't be cold. When I'm stacking boxes and feel someone watching. Stress, lack of sleep, PTSD. My brain rewired itself in ways that never fully heal. That's what they told me. I almost believe it. But rent is due in 3 days and the night shift pays extra, and my dad says I'm finally being responsible. So I stack the boxes. I scan the barcodes. I ignore the cold spots in the break room and the way the lights flicker in the back corner. I almost believe it's all in my head. Appreciate you tuning in for the chills. Hope this helped you unwind. Share your story ideas in the comments and subscribe to become part of our nocturnal crew. Until next time, take care.